All right, so your homework was good. This set of moons, so you should make sure you have the one that you have the sun coming from the right. I did check everybody's to make sure, thank you, that you had the sun on the right, because the other one was one we did together in class. The first moon, so the one at the top, should have been a waxing quarter. Check your work. Did you draw this picture? Is that what you colored in? Do you have a half and half with the white on the right and the black on the left? Is that what you drew? That's a waxing quarter. What's up? Because number one's up here. Does that change does that make it all better? Okay. So if you were looking at this one, Chris, is this the one you had labeled 1? Then that would have been new moon, yep. Okay, so then, yeah, so then we're going over here to this moon. That should look like a waxing crescent, which would look like that. Again, is this what you drew? Check your work, be honest with yourself. Is it mostly dark with a little sliver of white on the right again? Make sure you know your difference between your right and your left hands. Moon number 3, like we just said, that's a new moon. Moon number 4, that's going to be a waning crescent. Again, double check your drawings. Check your work. Mostly dark with just a little sliver on the left this time. How about a waning quarter? Okay, again, half and half. Mine's not quite half, but got light on the left. Waning gibbous, mostly light on the left. Did you draw a gibbous? A lot of people get gibbous and crescents confused. So please be careful that this is the drawing you drew. Almost a full moon with just a little bit missing on the right here. Speaking of full moon, that's number 7. And number 8 should have been a waxing gibbous. We good with these? Should we do another one, or you think you got it? Okay, Drake says he's good. How about I give you a quiz on moons tomorrow? Another take-home quiz tomorrow. No. Take-home quiz. So my question is, do we need to practice one more time before you do a quiz?
Maybe everybody's not the same, right?
Wait, what are we doing on Thursday?
Finishing up the chapter.
I'm not gonna do.
So watch the teams. Do you guys want, let's do one. Let's do one just to make sure. You were supposed to pick one up. Did you do that? I mean, I know it's only week 36 and it's hard to remember what to do when you walk in the room. Get up and get it since none of you read the board. Thank you for the few of you who did.
This one?
Yep.
No.
So for this practice, I would like you to put all other copies of it away. Put everything else away so you don't just try to copy. Let's do.
I don't have a cross cover, so I'll just flip it out.
Oh, I was gonna get you, I'll do that today. Today, we're gonna go again back to the sun coming from the left. And we'll put moon number 1 here and go clockwise. I think this is different than the ones we've done it before, but since you're putting them away, it doesn't matter. So start with moon number 1 over on the far left. See that, Chris? Moon number 1 on the far left. And go ahead and knock out these moon phases. If you need help, this is the time to get it. I will also remind you, where did I put it? I will remind you of the questions that I think you should ask yourself when you're doing this. Is the moon all dark? That's a new moon. Is it all light? That's a full moon. Is it mostly dark? That's a crescent. Mostly light? That's a gibbous. Half and half? That's a quarter. Waxing, light on the right. Waning, light on the left. Highly recommend you ask yourself those questions to do this. Do not get hung up on the pattern. Make sure you know these. What up?
I was like, thinking about.
I was seeing the same mistakes I see all the time where you get it for the most part. But sometimes the waxing and waning gets confused and the crescent and the gibbous get confused. So what's moon number 1? That's a new one. Now, one thing I recommend, because some people are getting this mixed up, one thing I would recommend you doing is labeling them first. So one thing you could do, actually, let's do it here. I'm gonna go through and label this as a new moon. Now, moon number 2, when I cover up the back half and ask myself those questions, mostly light, mostly dark, or half and half? Mostly dark with the light on the left, so this is a waning crescent. Now that you know it's a waning crescent, I would label it and then decide how to draw a waning crescent. Label it first, don't try to draw it first. So waning crescent, again, we know that there's a crescent shape. Is that crescent shape that's going to be lit up going to be on the right or the left? Left. So then draw yourself the crescent. Light on the left. Most of us are right-handed. Those of you who are left-handed will have to reverse this, but remember the hand, if you're right-handed, you're writing with your right hand. So a waning crescent, we want the light on the left. So if you think about it in steps, then you'll end up drawing it correctly. And if we know our rights from our left, which I know you all know it, but you have to stop and think about your right and your left. Please don't just go, oh yeah, that's my right, that's my left. Stop and think. So here's what they should look like. We've got the waning crescent, little bit of light on the left. Waning quarter, half and half, light on the left. Waning gibbous, mostly light with the light on the left. Full moon. Waxing gibbous, we're back to mostly light with the light on the right. Waxing quarter, half and half with the light on the left, right. And waxing crescent, light on the right.
Did you say half moon for the waxing quarter?
Nope. No such thing as a half moon. I know it looks like it, but you can't say it. It's still just a quarter. Feeling a little good better with these? Okay. All right, the very last thing we have to do with moon is tides. So on page 23, now here's where if you never numbered your pages, you're gonna get messed up. So everybody find this page, you should have changed it from 22 to 23. Go on this page. And before we get into what are tides and how, the notes we have to take, I want to just do one adjustment to this page. So right here, see how this line from the pictures, take that straight up and we're going to divide these notes into two, like a T-chart here. So I just followed that line straight up and I'm going to make a T-chart. This side is going to be labeled spring tide. And this side is going to be neap tide. Yeah, no, weird word, right? We'll get to those notes in a minute, but I just wanted to have this set up and ready to go. Yeah, we'll learn that right now. Do you guys know what tides are? Ever experienced tides? Let's go with that.
Water.
Which it has to do with water. What kind of water?
Rivers.
Ocean. Tides are only something that happens in the ocean. You would notice these at the beach or a harbor. You would not notice these on Lake Erie. Does anybody know what causes the tide? It is the moon. The moon's gravity. Now, do you feel the moon's gravity?
No.
I'll think you're fibbing.
No.
No, we don't notice the moon's gravity. None of us are being pulled towards the moon right now. None of us. Why is that? Yeah, that's it.
Where's the earth? That's actually it.
No, that's not it.
Oh.
It's the Earth's gravity. The Earth's gravity is overpowering the moon. Now, the moon does have gravity, but we are not being pulled to the moon because we're really close to the Earth right here. Now, aren't the oceans really close to the Earth?
No, there's so much.
No, they're not. They're right on top of the Earth. So the oceans are also right on the Earth. So how come the ocean water is being tugged towards the moon, but I'm not?
75% of the-
No, because
You
each,
know that there's more land than there's.
well, there's land under the ocean, we know that, right?
How big is it? 75%.
Okay. Okay, so let's keep going. So each individual water droplet is teeny tiny. And each individual water droplet is actually being tugged a little bit towards the moon. And that's what's causing the tides. I want to show you some tides because not all of us have seen tides. If you've never been to the ocean, you've never seen the tides. But you may have seen videos of tides, which is what we're about to do right now. So let me just,
So like if the moon got really close, went over the ocean, it would split it.
I will talk about that Friday at 5 o'clock.
There's no school for that.
Oh, yeah, I hold a what if class on Fridays after school. So this is, I actually don't know where it is. I think it's somewhere in Canada. So you can see here right now, we've got the water way down here. There's kind of like a, I don't know if I'd call it a beach, but some sort of little area where you could hang out. It certainly doesn't look like white sand or anything like that. It might not be the best beach to go to, but it's still a little bit of a beach. Watch this. Is a time-lapse video over several hours. Watch that water change. It's still pretty far out there, but it is slowly going up. You can see it getting a little closer to the rocks here, coming a little closer to us. But we're only 20 seconds in. You see how much it's gone up now? Pretty significant, right? This, by the way, would have been over a 6-hour period. So you can see there, this was all sand before, almost all the way out to that dock was sand. Now it's completely covered, so I'll just, again, so you can see, we've got, oh boy, this one changed. You silly.
Can you watch that one?
Nope, I got a different one to watch. So again, just for a frame of reference, that dock was not, okay, here's the end of it. So now we're high tides right here. You did it again.
I think this one.
I know. So here's the low tide. You can see that dock was almost sand right up to the dock. So then 6 hours later, it looked struggling. 6 hours later, that dock looks like it's in the middle of the ocean practically, and no sand is left visible.
So it'd be as.
No, remember, the moon, it takes 27.3 days for the moon to go around the earth. So the moon, in that 6 hours, the moon hasn't moved very much, but what has moved? The earth is rotating because the earth rotates 15 degrees per hour. So in that 6-hour period, the earth has gone a quarter of the way around the earth. You guys wanna watch another one, I take it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured as much. This one's probably my favorite one to watch.
It's summer and time to shop shoes for the whole of. Shop online and at a local famous foot.
Not the one I wanted to show, but we'll watch it anyway. So this is what it has. Look. So planning, grounding, any of that, yes. You can already see the water starting to come in quite a bit. There's plenty of land. Drake asked, is it always a 6-hour difference? It's always a 6-ish difference. So that was 6 hours and 10 minutes for that one. All right, let me find, this is the one I like to watch. So it's the same area that's in Nova Scotia. So now we're into a harbor where people are parking their boats. Nice and easy with the boat. Water's going down to the low level. Yeah, you'll see that probably are they not getting on those boats. Nor could any more boats come in. So it's right down there. Back up. That was 6 hours to get from the high to the low, and then another 6 hours to go from the low to the high. Yeah, these fishermen have to plan their day. You can't come in during low tide, you can't come out during low tide. Have a very small window when they do this. That was my favorite. All right, so that was enough videos. I know videos are fun, but let's wrap up moons here. So the last. So tides right at the top on those lines. The rising and falling of the ocean surface. That's officially what a tide is. The rising and falling of the ocean surface. Notes on the top of page 23, by the way. The change in tide is the result of the changing position of the moon and the sun. And I'm gonna have you add one more bullet to this that says tide. The high tides always line up with the moon is a third bullet I'd like you to add to that. So 3 bullets about tide. So just like we were saying, in that 6-hour difference between high and low tide, the moon barely moves. The reason it's really 6-ish hours, so that 6 hours and 10 minutes, is because the moon does scoot forward a little bit in its path. So that's why it's not a perfect 6 hours. But what it is the places lined up with the moon, so here and here on this model right now, they'll be getting the high tides right now. Then the earth will rotate and these new places will get the high tides. While these guys are getting the high tides, what do you think's happening opposite? They're getting the low tides because they don't just pull the water out of nowhere. The water gets pulled from the low tide over to the high tide location. Now, what's up with the spring tide and the neap tide that I had you write down before? Now, this next page looks a little overwhelming, but I will say it's the last notes we're gonna take today. So here's the next part. Notice that sometimes the sun gets in on the action. So that's called a spring tide. So this occurs when the moon, the earth are in a straight line with the sun. So normally the sun doesn't pull on the oceans at all, but when everybody's lined up with this, like this, in this picture, the sun gets in on the action and pulls those tides a little higher. It's called a spring tide, not spring the season, but spring like a slinky that can be stretched out really far and pushed in really far. So spring tide is when we have the highest high tides because it's being pulled out really high, and the lowest low tides because they're being pushed back really far. All those videos that I showed were specifically during the spring tide. Highest high tides they could get and the lowest low tides they can get. And to answer your question, the word neap comes from Old English meaning lacking. So it's when it's lacking a big change. So a neap tide, this is the opposite of the spring tide. So now the sun's not getting in on the action. The sun has no pull on the tides. And we'll get the highest high tide or the lowest high tides, meaning they don't come up the beach as far. And the low tides don't go as far back. So there's not as big of a change. Now take a look at these pictures. It's the last thing I want to do today. So notice in this first one with the spring tide, again, see how the high tides are following the moon? In both of them, the high tides are always lined up with the moon. The high tides, no matter where the sun is, the high tides will always line up with the moon. When it's in this position, when the moon and the sun are lined up, the high tides just get pulled higher. In this case, the sun's over here, moon's up top, so the sun is not pulling any stronger. So this is it for moons. You have done moon phases. You can name them, you can draw them, you can tell me which one is where. We did eclipses yesterday and tides today. That's it. So tonight's homework is all practice with the moon, because tomorrow you're going to get another take-home quiz on the moon. So tonight you have, I know it looks like 17 questions, but questions, I think 11, 12, and 13 are non-existent. They're not in it goes from 10 to 14, I believe. So it looks like 1 through 17, but there's really only 14 questions for homework tonight. You guys have almost 5 minutes. You could definitely get a head start on your homework. And those of you who still owe me the take-home quiz, make sure that gets turned in.